Welcome to Countercurrents. I'm Larry Johnson, and today, with no big introduction, it's Alastair Crooke, everybody's favorite British diplomat, a man who's got vision and a vast understanding of not just the events in Israel and Palestine, but a genuine strategic thinker. And so we're going to get into some of the big picture view of what's actually transpiring today. Stay tuned. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It would be, we're building up an audience, and I'd like to get it up around 100,000, which would be a good goal. Here's Alastair. Okay, I got the recording going. So I was watching you on Judge Napolitano earlier today, and I thought you really had your finger on it with respect to, sometimes we get preoccupied with we're so busy looking at the trees, you don't step back to look at the forest. So I want you to let's give the forest view of what's taking place now, not just in the West Asia, Middle East, but the global picture of what's transpiring right now.
Well, I think we're actually just watching. This is the perspective from outside of the United States. It's not my perspective particularly, but the general perspective is the world is looking with a certain surprise at President Trump seemingly destroying, self-destructing, and destroying the presidency coming to an end. And so I think really the sort of big picture that I see is that really this is the crossover point. This is really the crossover point. On the one hand, between the effort to maintain the hegemony, because of course, at the bottom, this is always really not so much about Ukraine or Iran, but it is always being about maintaining the dollar position, the dollar hegemony. And so I think that this is the point at which we're seeing the crossover, because the huge mistakes that have been made, the egregious misreadings of the ground, which are almost inexplicable, but these misreading of China, that China would just sort of collapse at the imposition of tariffs on it, and it would sort of give up, and that it wouldn't have any cards to play, that it wouldn't be able to come back and negotiate, that it would be, if you like, just sort of weak. The complete misreading of Russia, that Russia was weak, that it was not capable of winning the war, and that they were, if you like, that Russia could easily be toppled if there was sufficient pressure inside Russia, that then we would have a Western proxy coming in, and it would be the 1990s again coming back into power. And then again, the same sort of misreading in Iran. The misreading in Iran is bad, because clearly both Washington and Israel believed that Iran was just a complete house of cards. That and we saw this very much from that night of the 13th of June, Friday the 13th, when the sort of surprise sneak attack was launched on Iran by Israel. That Trump was clearly involved in. The United States was clearly a unified party.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The preparation had been going on for months, not even extending into years. Pre-positioning equipment, preparing Azerbaijan, preparing the Kurds, preparing sabotage groups going in, planning and organizing this operation. It was clearly a very, detailed plan, sophisticated plan. And it had a huge initial success in the sense that it did decapitate key members of the military command and also took out, not so, in a completely different area, just assassinated a dozen or so scientists at their home, his home with their families, killing them all. And so they thought, and Trump was at this time, because he was calling a number of people, one after the other, and always saying the same thing. And they say, Israel's going to win, isn't it? It's going to win. It's going to be a great success, isn't it? It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a showstopper. It's going to be the showstopper. So clearly he was expecting what the Israelis had presented to them. This decapitation would lead to the complete collapse of Iran, that it would just fold and that it would be like Syria. When Assad left Syria, it was like an open shop. You could walk in and take what you wanted from the shop. The doors were unlocked. You could go in and steal anything. And he thought it was going to be that. Well, actually, they got it totally wrong, because actually what it has done was spur a great outpouring of Shia fervor of identity, Shia identity, and Iranianism, particularly amongst the young, particularly amongst those that, so many in the West have miscalculated and thought, that Iran was just a seething mass of discontent, and that if only they took out, as they hoped to do, the ground, the leader.
Let me just interject. I think what let's call it the Pearl Harbor effect, because prior to Pearl Harbor, the United States, the public opinion was decidedly against getting involved in the war in Europe. After that, what was viewed as a surprise attack and unwarranted attack on the United States, the unity in America went off the charts. And I think that you're describing the same sort of phenomena has now happened in Iran, correct?
Absolutely. And, it came at a time a couple of days ago with Muharram, which was, if you like, recognizing what happened at Karbala in the 9th century when the Prophet's grandson was killed by a vastly superior army from Damascus. And he's fought on with a small band of 60-odd men against 3,000, but did not hesitate to continue the fight in the interest of justice, as they saw it, and the interest of Islamic continuity. And so this was, it came just at this moment. And so for many people, for many Iranians and Shia, and this is why I was trying to extend it and widen it, I mean, the Shia world as a whole started in a sense, and I'm talking symbolically, not necessarily literally, but they saw the unprovoked attack on Iran, the decapitation, the assassination, all of these things, as another Karbala, as another attack on Shia, which Karbala was, by the Sunni, while the establishment, the caliphate in Damascus. And they saw it, they see it in the same way. And so it did generate this sort of strong, not just the Iranian nationalism, but about Shiism being under attack. And this was reflected. I made a short message of it, but it was very important that after that attack, there is a thing called the Madra'iyah, which is the sort of the Ayatollahs. These are the people that lead the Islam across the world, Pakistan, Iraq. These are the people, and they're called Maja. These are the people that you go to. Most people, she have a Maja that they refer to. You can refer to it for guidance, even on things like divorced or what's happening in the family level. You have a Mahdi, and he is the sort of moral guy for many, many people. And some of them are really famous, like Grand Ayatollah Sistani, who is, almost, people, I wouldn't say worship is the wrong word, but I mean, he is, a rock star.
Yeah.
And there are four others that all wrote these statements saying that if there's an attack on the Mahdi, on the supreme leader, then we will issue a jihad fatwa against America and Israel. And that first person to do that was Sistani in Najaf in Iraq. And his guidance is absolutely respected everyone in the world. So it was actually a real gathering, not just of Iran, but of the Shia altogether. This is coincided with the other aspect. And it's one of these coincidences, unfortunate, tragic coincidences, which are really changing that part of the Middle East, because what is happening at the same time as we see in Syria, the remnants, or at least the rebirth of ISIS, after 10 years, the worst type of repressive jihadist of that type of, if you like, al-Wahhabism has come back into being in Syria, has taken over Syria with the support of Turkey. And it is on a killing spree against Shia. Alawites are Shia. I think people just hear them being Alawites. But they are a form of Shia that separated from the 12 Shia, I think about 6th century, 7th century ago. Mm-hmm. But they are accepted by the supreme leader in Iran, accepted and issued a statement saying that the Alawites are all Shia. They are being killed, thousands. Neighbors are killing them. They are being killed in Latakia and those places where they have are mostly concentrated. Their daughters, their young wives are being taken, kidnapped, and then put into marriages with the young jihadists, just as we saw in Iraq during that period, to be effectively the sex slaves of the jihadist movement. And you can imagine this having a huge effect, and not just on Shia, but it's also on many Sunnis who are, expressing sympathy with the Shia. I mean, conversions are not unheard of in these sort of times. And this is coinciding at the same time, the killings of Christians and Alawites and others in Syria, with the Israelis and with America in the name of the envoy Barak, who is the envoy Syria and Lebanon, who has gone to Lebanon and said, this is the ultimatum you have. You either disarm completely Hezbollah, however you do this. You have to disarm it, or Syria, supported by Israel, will come in and will absorb Lebanon into Greater Syria, al-Sham, as it was called. And Lebanon was part of Greater Syria at one stage. And we will take the northern part of Lebanon, which has always been linked, if you like, to that part, Tripoli, with Homs, Hama, is radically Sunni, very fundamentalist Sunni. We're going to take that and we will disarm, we will kill the Hezbollah. You have the choice. Do it, or we will take Lebanon and dismember it and balkanize it. And that is the choice that you face. That's what he said. Explicitly, publicly, you can see it anywhere. And he's calling for civil war.
Yeah.
he or just about a majority in Lebanon.
Do you think he's doing that without coordinating and talking to Erdogan and Turkey, or do you think?
It's done with Turkey. Yes, of course, it's done.
I mean, Turkey
is driving.
Yeah, because Turkey seems to be really a noxious, malevolent player in all of this, with respect both to Syria and to Azerbaijan.
And to Azerbaijan, because that's the other element to it, where that Azerbaijan played an important element in, if you like, being a base for missiles fired during that, on the 13th of June, that attack on Iran, were fired from within Azerbaijan. And aircraft, Israeli aircraft, circled through the northern part of Iran to Azerbaijani airspace, and then took a dive down to the Caspian, where they were able to fire directly cruise missiles, standoff cruise missiles, directly into Iran. One of those was the ones that hit the, if you like, the deep meeting place of the National Council, the Security Council, the Supreme National Security Council of Iran, in which were the leaders, in which Pezeshkian was now sort of admitted that he was there and had to come out of one of the exits. It was done in the same way they done it in Nasrallah. They destroyed all the advents and what they knew of as the exit point, because Nasrallah actually started it. Yeah, they sort of buried. They intended to do the same.
Well, what do you think is the foundation, the basis for the relationship between Israel and Azerbaijan, Aliyev? Because again, my understanding is that the CIA, Azerbaijan Baku, represents one of the largest CIA stations. So I'm not sure about bases, but at least a station in the region, because it's there to coordinate, if you will, both going after Iran and going after Russia. Mossad clearly has a presence. I don't know about British presence, but I would imagine it's there as well.
Yeah, they have a defense attaché who was supposed to be there about 2 months ago, and he's coordinating much of this, I believe. I don't know, sure, but I think so. Look, you have to, I mean, this, again, Turkey plays a very crucial part in this. And a long-standing Erdogan ambition to create a whole Turkic, not Turkish, but a Turkic sphere, right up into Russia and even to parts of the mountainous area of Russia, where, according to him, Erdogan, this is the origins of the Turkic people. And so Azerbaijan has an element of the actual leadership, which is a very corrupt leadership, which is involved and has been involved in Russia, sort of gangs and crime syndicates and things in Russia for years, and it's not for that. It is, the leadership is more Turkic, if you like, the Turkic Azeris, as opposed to the majority, which are Iranian Shia. So about, I think, 85% are Shia. It's always been a very secular state, but the Shia of Iran are the majority. Azerbaijan was a part of Iran until not so long ago. And so they are very much connected to Iran. But those are the areas of Iran and of parts of Azerbaijan, for example, fought with, of course, with Iran against Saddam Hussein in the Iraq-Iran war. I mean, they've always been loyal. They are all totally Iranian. I just give your listeners just one example, because I've heard Americans who are involved in the so-called Iran program say, oh yeah, but we've got all these minorities and they hate the leadership and we've only got to give them a chance and they'll take it over. And the areas, I mean, there's like glass ceiling, they can't get up, above this glass ceiling, they're ostracized and and I would say to them, well, there's one really quite famous person who actually writes very good poetry in the Azeri language. He's fluent. I mean, he speaks the Azeri, of course. And he's known more generally as the supreme leader. He is actually Azeri.
Yeah.
Where's your glass ceiling?
Yeah.
I mean, it is the supreme leader who writes Azeri poetry. So it gives you some sense that, it's not sort of clear cut and cut off and at all like that. So, I mean, I think that Iran has a huge hold over Azeri if it chooses to exercise ability to impose itself. I mean, Azeri is a temple on the map compared to the huge size of Iran.
Yeah, I don't know what's the population of Azerbaijan offhand. I don't know offhand.
9 million.
So there was someone saying that, oh yeah, Azerbaijan is going to invade Iran to take territory, and I'm thinking, are they suicidal?
But they do. But this is. I mean, this is a narrative. I mean, like honestly, this is what I've seen several times in this period of people saying, "Yes, don't you know the Azeristan is going to come in and take and invade Iran, and then the Kurds are going to do it from Erbil, and Iran will collapse." And I think, well, I mean, just look at the map.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and this was a province of Iran. I mean, it wasn't. They have roots and depth in that. But the Azerbaijan thing has got another complex thing, which you said is that Azerbaijan has this, as I say, the leadership, Aliyev and so on, are basically Turkic. Long ago, there was a Turkic element. And the Shia were there, and then that came in, and then it became very secular during the Soviet period, and it is now known for its crime syndicates, particularly deeply buried in Russia, and Turkey operates in this. And what they're trying to do, Turkey has this ambition to open this Zanzibar corridor. This is a tiny little corridor that goes through Armenia and could link Turkey directly with the Caspian. And that's what Turkey wants opened, and then it wants to go right up into China and extend the Turkic influence into Central Asia. I mean, this is like gold dust to Americans and British based in Baku, and they think, wow, we can use that against Russia and against Iran because, they are like this. But at the moment, Russia is, you probably see, I won't go into the details because but they've been throwing out Azeris from Russia. Deeply, there's a purge going on of Azeris from Russia. These are the criminal networks in Russia who've been there sometime. Why? Because the Russians say that it was these Azeri criminal groups that had played a part in facilitating the spider's web attack on Russia. The same thing that we had in Iran, where pre-positioning drones inside the country, preparing the sites for them to be used. In that case, it was preparing drones in Russia to attack the strategic bomber bases of Russia. And they think that these criminal units were part. So there's a purge. They're purging Azeris from the security services of Russia. and they hit back at Azerbaijan. You probably saw 2 Ukrainian refineries not so long ago. I can't remember exactly. Were destroyed.
Yeah, it was last week, and those I understand those were owned by actually Aliyev, the president.
That's right. They were owned by him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and also the Haifa refinery
right.
was not owned by him, but taking oil from Azerbaijan. It was again oil from Baku. That was
Apparently,
that. So it's lost 2 of the main sources of income.
well, in fact, the Haifa refinery, Stanislav Krapinski, who actually worked in the oil business. He was interviewed recently on the Duran, and he said that refinery is down. It's not going to be up for a while, maybe a month or two. So it suffered significant damage, which is got to be having a direct impact on the Israeli economy.
Exactly. But the point is here, to get back to the big picture, everything is being heated up. The Caucasus are being heated up. They're seen by the West as the soft underbelly of Russia, like Georgia and Azerbaijan, Armenia, which is trying to join NATO. All of this is a sort of soft underbellies. And furthermore, they have the networks inside Russia and the networks inside Iran to a certain extent. We can weaponize these people. So we have this going on at one stage, and we have, if you like, the weaponization of the ISIS element against the Shia of Syria and against the Hezbollah forces in the south. And, this isn't going to lead back to, the Abraham Accords 2.0. This is a nightmare. Because it's Israel and Turkey doing essentially in Syria, masterminding the attempt of getting Syria to be part of the Abraham Accords, and there'll be meetings going on in the UAE between Shia and the UAE officials talking about how to leverage Syria. Because what am I talking about? At the bottom line, what it has started is the old sectarian divide across the Middle East, of the Sunnis trying to drive out and weaken Shia influence. It's an old, long story, but basically it's still that sectarian. Look, Iran is not going to place its tanks on the front lawn of the Gulf states or do anything like that. What they fear is actually the fervor of Iranian Shias, the revolution. Iran has always had a revolution. That's what they fear. It's not because it's totally alien to their material, hedonistic lifestyle of the Gulf state, where actually people in Iran are prepared to sacrifice themselves literally, and to lose their life even for something that they believe in. It's totally alien to the other part. The Sunnis of those Gulf states are totally sort of preoccupied with the external, if you like, mark of Islam. You want to do it by wearing very pious clothes, and you pray 5 times a day. And if the Prophet said it be this way, it's in the same way. And it's all the externality. Shiism is all about the internal. It's about the transformation of the self and of the consciousness.
Well, in fact,
this is worth taking.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. What is annually? There's a ceremony where they parade and they flagellate themselves as what? What is that called?
Well, it's enduring assurance that you get that, yes. And that is part of the process. But I saw it, when I was in Kabul and things during the pilgrimage down there to the Imam Hussein Mosque. Some of the pilgrims had walked all the way from furthest parts of the region in Iran to come to Kabul at the time of the pilgrimage. And people gave them everything. I met families there that said, the boy would say to me, for example, said, my father, he been stayed in for years to get a new roof on our house, and he's just given all the money to the pilgrims. That is, that's typical, and that is the difference, the huge difference.
Do you use is that, and that's different from what you see in the Sunni communities?
Totally different.
Yeah.
You see, you go to the Sunni community, you go to the Gulf States, and they're watching Bloomberg.
Yeah.
It is different. I say, one is externalized. The main thing is that you should, for Sunni Islam, these people, what we call them salivists, but it is the tradition of the Prophet has to be replicated exactly. The right clothes, the right, mark on your head, and all of these things, the external exemplar. And so they are called scientific salivists because of the whole history of what the Prophet might have done or said on this day, on that day, on the other day. And they trace these sort of progressions, the authenticity of all of these things. It's called the hadith, and they follow them exactly. Whereas if you look at Shia, you take something like Ghazali, who was a poet, and he eventually was the caliphate, I think, executed him. But he was a man, and he wrote, and I remember it very well, he wrote these passages in which he said, listen, you may know the Quran by heart. Maybe you can repeat it by heart. You know Sharia law, you know the Hadith, you know it all. You're still not a Muslim. You're only a Muslim when you have allowed that knowledge to transform, to change your conscience, transform you as a human being. And that is, if you like, the difference.
Yeah. In fact, I had one of my readers reached out to me who had been Native American, and he'd converted initially to a Salafist Sunni version, and then I guess I could call it a new conversion experience. He converted to Shia. So
Yes.
yeah, it parallels what you're saying. What do you make of we immediately after the Trump obliterated the Iranian nuclear reactors, they said, oh yeah, we're going to be talking, we expect to reopen negotiations with Iran next week or the week after, and there's going to be progress on the Abraham Accord. We've seen nothing on either front. Is your view that none of that's going to happen?
Something else is going to happen, I think. And what is going to happen, and I think it's very important, we're talking today, Monday. I think tomorrow, Tuesday, the European three have promised that they're going to start the process, launch the process for snapback of sanctions on the ground of that IEA resolution that Iran is in breach of the JCPOA. That means that all the sanctions under JCPOA have to be reinstated, and it's mandatory for every United Nations state to do so. And the Iranians said pretty clearly, don't do that. It's a big mistake. And if you try and force us to have the IEA back, and you know the story of what the IEA has done then, most Iranians, what they tell me, and I believe it, is they said that the Iranians come back, the IEA come back to Iran, they'll be killed. They hate them because they believe they were right or wrongly. The Iranians say they have the full evidence that the IEA were precisely identifying the sort of the scientists to pass on to Israel, to Mossad. Now, I don't know whether that's true. I can't tell you, but I do know that the IEA used to insist that they needed to have talks and to have interviews with the Iranian scientists to ask them about the state of the program. What happened to that information? I can't tell you, but most Iranians would tell you that they believe that the IEA both set up, remember the resolution on the 12th of June, which declared for the first time in years, and which the Russians have condemned utterly, Chinese too, that it was in breach of the JCPOA. Then they attacked in the 30s. And the West is now saying, well, the IEA must come back. They have to, monitor where everything is. And these are just regarded as the Western spies. And so they're not going to be allowed back. So I think what will soon happen, if the European countries do and are successful in launching snapback, and the West goes on to insist on the IEA going back to Iran, they'll leave the MPT. It's clear. They'll leave the MPT. And so at that point, then there will be all sorts of cries from Israel and from parts of the United States and parts of Europe saying, oh, we can't have that. We need another attack on Iran. We have to make sure that this is completely settled. We have to finish the job in Iran. Maybe some of that enriched uranium, wasn't destroyed. We don't know where it is. We can't live with this, not knowing where it is, if it was destroyed or not. We must have the inspection.
Right.
And if they push that, they'll probably leave the MPT, and then there will be pressure for more military action against Iran, particularly as what I said to you about Iranians and their sort of, if you like, their fervor, the passion that is, especially present amongst Shia, either in Hezbollah or in Iran, whichever, if you like, or anywhere else in Iraq, which does, if you like, it frightens Israel too. That's what they want, if you like. And they feel the only way to do that is by regime change. And Abiy or someone of Western state being put in to Tehran to run the government. That's the only way they can feel they can guarantee that Iran will never move towards a weapons process.
But
That's the underlying story.
Well, they're in a different strategic position now than they were compared to 10 years ago, when the JCPOA was signed and they envisioned the snapback provisions, because at that point Iran was pretty effectively isolated because even Russia and China signed on to it in 2015. But today, I think with Iran's position in BRICS and the growing animus within Russia and China against the West for what they see as this unrelenting attack on them, I think Iran's in a much better position now to weather the snapback than it was 10 years ago. Do you share that assessment or not?
Completely. But the first point is that, Iran is going to emerge as a much stronger state in the region. They demonstrate their strength. And, they've demonstrated, the cohesion in their society. A very strong cohesion. It is going to be the most powerful state in the Middle East. Perhaps Turkey will challenge it, but, Iran is going to be a very powerful player. But I think, again, what I'm saying is that ultimately, Trump and his teams were misreading of the ground for China in Russia and Iran, which is visible to the whole world now, as they see it. And they see it playing out now in tariffs. And they see that these things make no sense. Brazil, whatever it's done. Is that a tariff or a sanction? Or doesn't it matter anymore? These things are having a big impact. For example, South Korea, Japan, they didn't go to the NATO.
Right.
And these are two of the most important ally of the United States. There is a feeling that everything is adrift, that the West is there not only erratic, but dangerously untethered and striking out and lashing out without any sort of consideration. So this is why I call it the crossover movement. It's the crossover because they see this as a West that is, if you like, its power is slowly, not immediately, but it is clearly diminishing. And the very process of this erratic inability to read the ground, inability to do any serious, if you like, thinking about how to achieve a relationship with China or Russia or Iran. All of this persuades people, and it accelerates the strength of Russia, China, and Iran acting as a cohesive unit. It is a cohesive unit. It doesn't mean they're an absolute alliance, but they're a cohesive unit.
Did you see? I was, before we started talking, I was on with the judge, and he showed a video clip of an interview that Putin had yesterday.
I saw.
Did you see that interview? And I think that was pretty ominous. I think it was Putin was deliberately putting that out there now on the eve of Trump's announcement tonight about how he's going to get tough with Russia. Where do you think Putin now views any possibility of relationship with Trump or the United States? Is it realistic or unrealistic?
I don't think there's a view. There are two separate parts. I don't think there's any trust in Trump. He's deceived everyone so many times. Just lie. Look what was the lies that underpinned the attack on Iran.
Mm-hmm.
The lies that underpinned what was happening and the spy's web attack on Russia's strategic policy. The lies that persuaded the agreements that they thought they had were with the United States were defeat. All of these things, Putin and the Iranians see them as being, it's not agreement capable. The United States cannot come to any form of agreement. But they all agree, too, at the same time, there is merit in trying to at least establish a conversation. I was speaking earlier, and I see, I don't know if you heard it, but I was saying, on the very basic, what is the sort of grassroots of establishing a relationship between the United States and Russia? Is to do the basic diplomatic groundwork, return the seized consulates and properties that belong to Russia in the United States, were seized not by Trump, but by an earlier administration, to launch flights between the two capitals to a point. And then that's all these things. When you read it and you say, if they can't even do that, quite clearly they don't intend to. They don't intend to have a proper relationship with us. This is very typical. And, ultimately, Putin's point is being saying all the time, okay, what is the relationship? You don't have to trust us. You don't have to believe everything I say. What we have to do is to get to the point when either of us says something, we mean what we say, we do what we say, and we can implement what we say. If that doesn't hold, then there's no relationship, right? It's just, narratives. And that's the case at the moment. They just don't believe that there is really an ability, because, why don't you do this? I've given an example. The most simple thing would be, we all know that if you write a finding a presidential fine was written during the last administration, instructing the CIA to pursue operations in the depth of Russia. Now, all it would take would be for Trump to say, well, maybe it was signed by the autocrat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to sort of contradict it. He just said, look, we're just looking in, maybe it was an auto pen signature on it. We'll try and find that out. But in the meantime, we're going to stop them attacking Moscow and keeping us back at this thing. Why doesn't he do it? And the conclusion everyone comes to it, because he can't.
Yeah.
The deep state is taking him over. The deep state is, and the deep state and other allied foreign interests are running this process, because the simplest thing, can't return the consulates, can't return, the basic, the property that Russia owned. Instead of which we're going down the opposite route. It seems, we don't know what's going to be announced tonight, but all the indications are that they're going to seize more of the Russia's sovereign assets that have been frozen in Europe and in America, and take them and use them to fund weapons for Ukraine. So, I mean, what does this tell you if you're Russian? Well, let's get on and finish off what we're doing in Ukraine as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Well, by the time this airs, we will have heard Trump's much ballyhooed announcement. I watched an interview you did with Press TV where they replayed predictions you made 2 weeks before the attack. So we're going to change your name from Alastair to the Prophet. The prescient one. So I'm gonna give you a chance to do it again. So
I know what happens to prophets.
Yeah. No, without honor in their own country. What do you think Trump's going to do tonight?
Well, I think it's been pretty well foretold. I think he's largely, the detail may be wrong, but I think what was said by Blumenthal and Graham on their television programs, the first part of it will be an appropriation, some part by the Europeans or Americans, of the frozen assets, which is totally legal.
Right.
They are protected from that. Some of that, and I think this is the aim, to persuade the Europeans to use the legal mechanism to steal these funds, and then to pay America for the weapons it's going to send to Ukraine, so that Trump can say, no, I'm not doing anything. The Europeans are giving the weapons, and they're paying us for them. It's great. What's to complain about that? And I think so. I don't know how much, if it'll be all of it or part of it. I think, in fact, the Europeans are already dipping into the principal of sums. I don't believe, because they keep giving $1 billion here, $1 billion there. And, when it was first frozen, we were told it was 1.2 billion a year. And they seem to be giving it every 2 months or so.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is, and this you followed more than me, and you're the expert. I don't think actually the America really has much to give.
Correct.
Right. And it will take months to get it there. In any case, the JASSM missiles, I think they have a normal range of about 350 miles. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right. They may be able to extend it to get it, but I mean, first of all, those have to be they're standoff missiles, as I understand it. They have to be launched from an F-16. And I don't know how many Ukraine have left now. But if you're going down the route of saying, well, we're going to give you some more F-16s, and we're going to have to train the pilots and prepare them.
Right.
This is years away.
It's just...
And then the last part is that, that will be the big ballyhoo, will be, sanctions, bone crusher sanctions. I just don't believe it, actually. I mean, I think this whole thing about sanctions. I mean, I'd be surprised if it's at 500, then the US can kiss goodbye the trading system, the world global trading system. I mean, it's not going to. It's just ridiculous. I mean, this is just ridiculous thinking, ridiculous sort of speculation. It's actually, I mean, discrediting. I mean, I did believe, and I do believe that there is a role for tariffs if you're trying to rebuild a real economy, a real manufacturing economy to protect infant industries and to do things. But this is now tariffs used as sanctions.
Yeah.
Why is it this high for one and this high for someone else? It's not being used in that way, which is why there's such a reaction against it from all sorts of states who are now trying to cooperate with China. Okay, the Europeans are talking about how they need to do a deal with China to avoid getting involved with American sanctions. So it's counterproductive. It's the same way as the attack on Iran was counterproductive, the same way that this attempt to impose a ceasefire on Russia has been counterproductive. All these things together spell for me this sort of crossover point, where actually you can see the physical dismemberment of Western policy and thinking. And its very failure is actually increasing the strength of other states. For example, China. China has to do nothing. You look, I think you said this, but look at the rate of what a euro is now on the foreign exchange. It was a little while ago, it was about parity. Now you'll see it's about 1.17, 1.18, 17% devaluation of the dollar at this time. Well, for states that are holding, large holdings of dollars or treasuries, 17% loss of value on your asset is big. So China doesn't have to do anything. It can, and Russia, they're just sitting and watching. That people are saying, it's so unstable in the United States. Look, the market is going crazy. I mean, Trump is blowing, a big, beautiful bubble in the United States with money. He's going to run the economy red hot. It's just a safe place to put our resources. Well, so I think we'll get a lot more people being cautious.
Well, I'll close with this. I think we can envision in a couple of years, Russia, China, India, Iran, they'll be giving Donald Trump an award for having done the most to promote and strengthen BRICS.
I think in a paradoxical way, you're right. Yes.
All right, my friend. Hey, thanks. You're always, people always flock to see your videos because you've got words of wisdom and great insight. And I thank you for sharing it today.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure, Larry. You do great work.
Thanks, my friend. As always, Alastair provides great insight and understanding. So thanks for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Share it with your friends, family, neighbors, even people you just met. I'm Larry Johnson, and this is Countercurrents. Thanks for watching.